1979 are a band, or is a band, that broke out in the 2000s, were a much more prominent name in the 2000s in indie rock music, went on to inspire quite a few different acts too. I feel as though their approach to rock music became pretty significant to bands such as Royal Blood, for example. You can definitely see that Royal Blood took influence from the 2000s, bands like Death From Above, bands like the White Stripes. I think the whole like rip-off thing that people went into huge amounts of detail was a bit over the top, because I think it's pretty safe to say that, you know, it was an influence rather than a blatant rip-off, really. Royal Blood had some alright tracks. They've got some pretty meh ones, but they had some alright ones. But it really goes to show that bands like this don't really get the appreciation that they deserve. They were good in the 2000s. They have a lot of good tracks, and yet they weren't really ever breaking out into huge mainstream popularity, despite the fact that they're pretty accessible and could easily really appeal to any given rock music fan. They took a long break though, they're back. They've been pretty consistent since about 2014. I will say their 2014 comeback album is pretty mediocre, not really a fan of that one. Although I never heard Outrageous Now, so I'll have to go back and listen to that one at some point. The new album for me is a pretty much sort of amalgamation of what they've done already. Pretty much all on this album. They haven't really defined or developed their style in any particular way. Not that they really needed to, but I think this album in a lot of ways just feels a bit too familiar. They didn't exactly need to change anything, and they already had a pretty distinct sound to begin with. But I will say that some of these tracks just feel like repeats of what we've heard before. They start off incredibly strong with the punchy and stompy 3-track run at the beginning. I think this is a really strong starter to the album. I was really hyped to see where they go, because these 3 tracks are really strong, giving us what they've already done before, but just really kicking out the gate, you know, barging through the gate to give us these really banging tracks. Then you get to NYC Power Elite Part 1, which is obviously a 2-part track. The first part is the first sign, I think, of where this album starts to lose itself a little bit in terms of the choruses. They don't really have this great amount of stickiness to them. I mean, this one is relatively catchy, but honestly, it kind of gets on my nerves more than anything else. The NYC Power Elite. I don't know what it is about it, but it just kind of irritates me. Then part 2 goes in like a very different direction, and the vocals go really muffled. And I'm struggling to understand anything that he's saying here. I'm struggling to pick out anything that's standing out. The whole instrumental and the vocals like paired together just sounds a bit mushy and not really all that great on the ears. And yeah, after that, I'm just not that enthralled with what's going on. I mean, I was so energized with the first few. I'm just so surprised that once you get to tracks like Glass Houses, the melody just isn't really there, and it's just not really particularly very sticky. I mean, you can hear the melody for sure, but it just doesn't seem to have a huge amount of weight behind it. Lyrically, I'm starting to be reminded of The Physical World, because a lot of the lyrics on that album were where I was really losing my interest with this one, with like the heaven isn't high and the hell is low, whatever he's talking about. Just not really feeling that bit, and he's kind of comparing it to him being high. Just a bit meh. Not sure why I keep hearing lyrics like that lately. The Pretty Reckless album had something similar to that too, so I was not really impressed with that line that she dropped on that album either. I didn't review that one, by the way, but it's just something I hear quite a lot, and it's just very cliche to me. Love Letter strips it back. Not as busy, not as hectic as what you'd expect from Death From Above. It's not like totally stripped back, obviously, but again, just leaving very little to no impression on me, which is a shame, because I don't think they have to be noisy and like all the time to make good songs. But I just think if they're gonna, you know, kind of rein it in, I'd want a bit more of a stronger hook, stronger melody, and I'm just not really getting that. Mean Streets has a bit of an odd structure to it. You start off really slow, again, sort of stripped back. And then out of nowhere, it's like this. Not in like an MC Ride type way from Death Grips, just a very out of nowhere burst from the vocals that I'm just a bit confused by. It feels very tacked on for me, almost as unearned as the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood ending, where everything prior to the ending was so dull and so mundane that they decided to go with the ending that they did, just to kind of make you feel like you got the Tarantino film that you were wanting all the way at the start of the film, and like 2 hours 40 minutes later you get the moment, you get the Tarantino moment. It's like this, it's almost like they were like, no, we have to do the noisy chaotic thing, but we don't really know how to do it, so we're just going to throw it in, we're going to tack it on, even if it doesn't make sense. Then you got the closing track, No War, which has this really spooky undertone to it, actually, a very creepy vibe to this one, which I thought was kind of interesting. Not too big on the vocals here, though. On the verses, this reminds me a lot of like Matt Bellamy. Don't know why, but I'm just reminded a lot of Matt Bellamy here. I'm not sure if the singer was aiming to sound like Matt Bellamy, but I definitely get a bit of a vibe from that. Not necessarily a bad thing to sound like Matt Bellamy, by the way, but I just thought it was something that was quite interesting. The track itself leaves not really much of an impression on me again. Don't know if this album is just not hitting me personally in ways that I wanted it to, because you can kind of see the core elements in a lot of these tracks are definitely there, but just the way that it kind of comes together doesn't really end up working. And I think it's just missing the immediate catchiness that the first few tracks had. Not that every track had to sound like that, but I just think they lose it a little bit once you get past that. But yeah, not really big on this, but I wasn't big on the Physical World either, so maybe 2010s or post 2010s Death from Above isn't really my cup of tea anymore. I don't know. So I'm going to go 5.5 out of 10. Definitely want to hear want to hear what people think in the comments, because I think some of their fans could really like this. But I personally am just not really feeling it. So definitely let me know your thoughts. Would love to see what you guys think. Sorry if you were hoping I'd love this one. Unfortunately, I just don't. Thank you for watching though. Do have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already. And goodbye.